Okay, so to the students, I'm going to start. Thank you for attending this meeting. This is your meeting, and you're welcome to post questions, make comments. I don't really have a planned formal lecture for you. We have one more actually to go, which we will record tomorrow, and it should be posted, say, by Thursday at the latest. But I want to use tonight to answer some questions you might have, to discuss your assignment that is coming up, to maybe just talk freely and demonstrate something about confirmatory factor analysis versus exploratory factor analysis and the issue of replication in science and practice. Yeah, and before I start with that, I want to congratulate the class on the quality of the questions that I get. Shows that you are really engaging with the content. Of course, I have not received questions from everybody, but what I've seen thus far is very nice, and I can see that at least in some of you, it is visible that the seeds have been planted that are growing with a growing interest in psychometrics, and about that I'm very pleased about that. Okay, colleagues, maybe let us start with the assignment quickly and we get that out of the way. You will see that I've posted, I will just share my screen. Oh, okay, that's the wrong one. Desktop, yeah, okay. And if we go to the course page, I believe you should be seeing our course page on your screen now from my computer. First, let's take a quick look at the announcement I made so that there is no misunderstanding. Assignment 1. Dear students, okay, so I've posted an assignment on the course page under heading assignments. Due date 10 October 2020, so it gives us just a little bit more than a month. You must submit it electronically. Okay, so I hope that clarifies a question that some of you might have. Bear in mind, you've got a month to do it, but it's not a month's work. It's just to give you enough time. And with respect to length, I cannot say for sure how long it must be. Some of you will have longer ones, other ones will have shorter ones. It's all about the quality of that you put in there. But it can be longer because tables and figures can take up quite a bit of space, and I don't want to put up an upper limit. All right, don't make it unnecessarily long. Okay, that does not necessarily gain extra credit. Okay, the assignment, okay, I designed it so that you will learn from it, and that's the most important thing. Above all things, is you must learn. And that really is the purpose of the assignment. And I know that you are going to have a great feeling when you're done with it, because just imagine if you were to look at it, and we'll look at the content of the assignment now within the next minute or so. But imagine yourself maybe, I don't know how long have we been going, say a month and a half back. And looking at that assignment, if you would have been able to do that. So I think you are really going to have a sense of accomplishment. Carl and I will respond to general questions about the assignment, and maybe we can schedule another Teams meeting like this, say 2 weeks from now. If there is a need for it, I'll be happy to do so. So we'll answer general questions, but we're not going to be able to give individual guidance. Okay, so So if you have questions, please send it to the discussion forum. We will answer it, and then all students can benefit from the insights gained. Right, so that's the hand-in date and the manner of submission. I will open up a section on the course page where you will be able to submit your assignment. All right. You could also email it, but there will be, you must please use the formal assignment link that will still be made available to you, and you will get notice of that, so there won't be any, you won't have any difficulty in doing that. All right, so let's turn then to the actual assignment, and let's see what is going to be expected of you. The first thing that I want to say is, I thought of making the assignment in such a, to make it such that you get the feeling of what it would be like to be a psychometrician or a test constructor, test developer in practice. So I've tried to give it a little bit of a sense of realism. This is not where I should be. I should be in the assignments. There we go. Okay, there's a Word document called assignment 1, and there are 2 data files that accompany it. Yeah. Sorry if I get my I's and R's, I still get them wrong. English is my 3rd language. Afrikaans is 1st, Engels is 2de, and English is 3rd. So please forgive me for those mistakes. All right, here we go. Make it a bit bigger. I'm asking you to imagine that you're working in an organization, maybe in the research department of an HR division, and you've been instructed by the HR director to construct a test. 2 tests, actually. Test of organizational commitment and a test of job satisfaction. So a team of researchers developed 40 items. The first 20, I did not make it explicit yet. So the first 20 is for organizational commitment, and the second 20 is for job satisfaction. And you might want to think of those 20 items for each of those concepts to represent the pool of items, right? A pool of potential items. And those 40 items have been administered to 2,000 persons in the organization. So we have data, 40 items, 20 which were written to be indicators of organizational commitment and 20 for job satisfaction. Well, the HR director wants us to build scales that contain 8 items for each of those 2 attributes. He wants evidence in support of the reliability and constructability of the 2 scales. And you have been appointed to lead this project. So we have the data of 2,000 persons in a file called assignment1.csv. You are to please write a report for the head of the research department where you describe the steps you took in developing the 2 8-item scales. Your report should focus on the following things that are listed, but you could also do other, describe and include other things that you deem to be relevant if you want. But at a minimum, you should describe your initial inspection of the data, how you examine the dimensionality of the data. Okay, bear in mind that although the intention is to develop 2 scales, it's possible that there might be additional traits or dimensions in the data. And we would want to know that. The goal of a factor analysis is to find the smallest number of factors that gives the best explanation. but we don't want to overlook any major factors. Third, or C, how you identify potentially problematic items with respect to convergent and discriminant validity. Remember, we want every item should measure what it's supposed to measure, but should not measure things that it's not supposed to measure. So it must converge on its trait, and it must discriminate itself from irrelevant traits. And the factor analysis is our guide there. Our factor loading shows us where it converges and where it does not. Describe D, how you identify the best items for retention in the scales, and then actually it should be E, how you interpret the correlations between the two scales and the underlying factors. You can include relevant tables and figures in your report. It counts out of 100. So it's a report. I'm going to give you a mark out of 100 for how you dealt with all the steps and the analysis and written it up for your HR, the head of the research department. What I'm after is I want to see, A, that you can do the things, but I want to see that you can attach proper meaning to what you're doing. This comes with experience. I know I've been doing this for close to 20, 25 years now, and you are really beginners at this. But you have to, you have to practice it. You have to read. If you have the opportunity to read test manuals, read articles, and your understanding is just going to deepen all the time. Also, with respect to the content that we've dealt with thus far, we've been going at it for a few weeks. And every week we're dealing with new concepts and new techniques, new software, and it takes time for those things to sink in. You must review it. You must go over it again. Take it slowly, look at the exercises we've given, practice with the data, and by the time you do, you're done with your assignments. You're going to be amazed. Okay, so that's the first part of the assignment. A file called assignment1.csv. Right. The second, I give you some hints. If you encounter problematic items early on in your analysis, so in your call, I just saw a notification about a bad network quality. Are things still okay?
Yes, it does seem that sometimes your voice comes and goes, but in listening within the context, I haven't noticed any crucial content gone missing.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Cole. If in your initial inspection of the data you encounter problems, or in your factor analysis you see that there are potentially weak items and so on, just exclude them. Don't retain them in your further analysis. Okay, so when you pick up something that is a problem, you deal with it, and from there you move forward. Okay, but just retain the original item names for all the items. Okay, so item 1 I think is called I1. Now, if you were to delete I1, then your new item 1 would be I2. Just retain the original names. That's all I need to say. We must not overcomplicate that. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate this a bit later with real data, but you have a large database. And I want to say something about replication. And in psychology, you might just Google something for yourself. I think if I were to go to Google quickly and you type in replication crisis in psychology, it just came up, or in science, it's all over in science, but there is a replication crisis in science. We should not just see something once to take it seriously. We want to see it repeatedly. So we want to repeat our analysis and find the same factor structure, and find the same reliabilities, and so on. And then we can take it seriously. Just looking at something once and drawing conclusions on the basis of that is dangerous, because there could always be some chance factors that influence our data on the day, and that won't be seen on a next occasion. So with this assignment, you have a large database. There are 2,000 persons. You could split your data in the CSV file into two parts. And so make two CSV files, two separate files in Excel. And place, say, 1,500 persons in the one and 500 in the other. And then you do all your development work, your initial work, and building your scales on the 1,500 cases. That's big. So, and why? In your exploratory work, when you do exploratory work, it's better to have a lot of data available so that errors can cancel each out and so on. And then once you've got your dimensionality, you've selected your items, even within that 1,500, you can still check for replication. And the factor congruence and those things, you can do it within that 1,500. And once you have all those results and your reliabilities, then you can go to your second file with the 500. And you now have established what the dimensionality is, and you've chosen your best items, you've got the reliabilities. Now that you've got your model, you've got your theoretical structure sorted out, now you can confirm that with the second file with 500 persons. So then you can, again, get the reliabilities of the scales, and you can perform confirmatory factor analysis rather than exploratory factor analysis, where the purpose would be to see now if we have established with exploratory work that this is the dimensionality, we can then put that theoretical model to the test with new data. I gave you some pointers towards some articles by Clark and Watson on test development and building validity into your tests. And those articles are really very good. I would highly recommend them, and your textbook. They may be useful reference sources. And then just quickly a note, you'd see I sent an announcement about it. One of your colleagues, Magnus van Vieren, he demonstrated to me some self-directed learning. It's clear that, and others, I've noticed this among several of you, but he's come across a nice article that helped him to understand reliability better, and I've shared that link with you as well, so you can, you're welcome to look at the work of Striner as well. Any other articles that you find useful. So when you write your report, it must be a report like in a professional setting. So it's got to be formal in style, yet I want it to be easy to read. So your first draft is not the draft that you must submit. You must work. Good writing is rewriting, especially with foreign concepts, novel ideas and techniques that we're dealing with here. Okay, it must be easy to read, yet formal in style. You must clearly communicate your results to a manager who is a psychologist with extensive experience in test construction. So your manager is going to be able to deal with everything that you throw at him, because he or she would be assumed to be a psychologist with relevant experience. Use headings in your report to guide the reader, and it will be electronically submitted. Okay. All right. There's a second section. You should not forget that. And this we have not yet dealt with in the course. We will deal with this in the lecture of this week, where we're going to investigate the issue of bias. in testing. And Mr. van der Bank in the second part, where you focus on decision making and psychometrics, is going to raise the issue of bias again. But now we're going to look at it from the perspective of building tests, constructing tests, and how we can avoid bias. And we're going to focus on gender bias. I'm going to use the Big Five inventory data set, which you are familiar with. And I've included the data set as a JASP data set, so you can just import that. And again, you're going to write a brief report when you describe the steps you took in identifying the item bias and present the results in table format, when you comment on the statistical significance and practical significance of the bias. Okay, so that is the assignment. These are typically things that psychometricians would do in the real world if they work in research departments or in companies that do test construction. But even if you were not to be in a position where you would do this in the real world, knowing these things are going to make you a better practitioner if you just use tests to help make decisions about people, for selection or for development or whatever. It's going to help you to think more critically about the information that is gained with tests. You're going to look with new eyes, I hope, at the evidence in support of validity and reliability, and that you're going to demand to see it rather than just assume that it is all in place. Okay, so that is the assignment. I'm going to quickly give you an opportunity if you have a question or something that you need to be clarified about the assignment. You are welcome to either, you can put up your hand or you can type a question to us. So let's just give a second or a minute.
Hi, Professor. Sorry, I can't put up my hand on my Teams. I hope you don't mind.
Okay. Then of course, please go ahead, Tanya.
I just from a practicality point of view, are we going to receive a marking grid to help us with regards to focus points and the mark allocation to those points, and also the referencing style? Will we be, I'm assuming we would be still have to use index referencing and so forth. Which referencing method do we use for this specific module?
Yeah, okay, it will be APA, the American Psychological Association's referencing style. And with respect to a marking sheet, you know, I don't really want to give one, because that giving you too much structure is going to take away the opportunity to dig deep yourselves. I've given you all the structure you need in the exercises and the skill test that you need to put into the report. And also the pointers or those hints that I've given, and also I listed the different things that you at a minimum need to address. Okay, so Tanya, so I want this to be a learning exercise, and if I make it too explicit what it is that I expect, then it becomes a tick box experience rather than a meaningful wrestling match with the content. I'm hoping this makes sense to you.
Yes, no, it makes perfect sense. I suppose when you do refer back to the content that was posted, the amount of times you mentioned certain things that I'm assuming that would then be your structure as you go through the assignment.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you
yeah.
make perfect sense. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. Right, Tanya. Anybody else? Somebody? Anybody? Nobody. Okay, is there typed? Okay. Okay, Tamsin has got her hand up. Yes, please go ahead, Tamsin.
Hi, Professor. So I know you said there's, roughly about 20 pages for the assignments. I'm just wondering if there is like a word count that we're going to be working with, just so that we I know the graphs and the tables will take up some space, but just so that we can get an idea of what the content is going to need to be size-wise.
Okay. Yeah, Tamsin, I have to just apologize. You broke up a bit, so I'm going to ask you to repeat, please.
Sorry, no problem. I'm just wondering with regards to the assignment length. I know that you said the tables are going to take up quite a bit of space, but just regards to like the report content, is there a word count that we can kind of work off?
Okay, I will think about that a bit more, and I will post something in that respect to help you. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. You're welcome.
Professor De Bruin.
Yes.
It's Carl speaking. I just thought I could add to your response to Ms. Tanzan. What I felt like we were also with last year also did this assignment to a certain extent. And I think what we found the value of not having such clear and can I almost put it step-by-step instructions is that it really encouraged you to engage with the content and also to know that you're busy writing a report for someone who needs to use it. So for example, let's say you're looking at the reliability and construct validity. One doesn't have to write pages and pages of what validity is and what reliability is. I think the idea is to write what is necessary so that it supplements the content that you're giving to the person. So if you're talking about a certain validity, you don't have to go into extreme depth in terms of what research has been done on that validity. Like the person who's going to be reading your report knows about that type of validity. So I don't think word count is that important. I think as long as you keep your content relevant to the exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis that you'll be performing, you should be 100% okay.
Thank you, Cole. Okay. Tamsin, your hand is still up. Is it? Do you have a new question?
No, sorry, my hand. Oh, hold on. There we go.
Okay. All right. Okay. More questions? Any answers? All right, colleagues, let's go to a little example again. I'm going to try and demonstrate this issue of replication. And okay, Yahutsu, please go ahead.
Hello. So I just wanted to ask, I heard you mention that section 2, it's not yet covered. Is it not? Do you mean it's not yet covered in terms of the weekly program, as in like we haven't done it already? Or
Yes.
at this point we're not gonna write, we're not gonna do it in the assignment?
No, we're going to do it in the assignment. So you will, that's the second part of the assignment. There are two parts to the assignment. And we will deal, I'll give you a lecture material and a video this week, later in this week, on that particular topic that covers that second part. So all the things that you've learned to date prepares you for that. Okay, but so it's going to, but I still have to deal with that, but it's definitely going to be part of the assignment. All right. I hope that's clear to you, Lehotsu. Okay. All right. So let's go to our JASP. I'm going to use just going to close all these analyses. Okay, so here we've got the big 5 data set. I've got a mine is called BFI gender.jasp. I'm going to select, say, just 10 items from it. I'll use the extroversion and the neuroticism items. So there are 5 items that have been written to reflect extroversion, 5 to reflect neuroticism. We're going to assume or pretend that we have these 10 items, but we don't know what the dimensionality is. We want to find the dimensionality, so we'll go to exploratory factor analysis. Before we do that, I forgot. We want to split this data set into a part that we can use for development or initial work, and then a part that we can use for confirmation. So to do that, I will need the CSV file. And let me see if I say bfigender.csv. There we go. Okay, so here's our file. And it turns out that there are also plenty cases in here. It was 2,800, I think. Yeah, 2,800 cases. Let's use the first 2,000 for SPFI, let's call it, give it new names, and save it as BFI gender 1. And BFI gender 1, I'm going to include only 2,000 cases. Just plenty. For factor analysis and reliability analyses, the more data you have, the better. These are really large sample techniques, and you can get much more stable results if you do it that way. Right. So from 2001 onwards, deleting, right? That's BFI gender 1. File, save. Yes. And we're going to, okay, we're going to for BFI gender 2, we're going to get rid of cases, first 2,000 cases. We are now going to delete. I hope I've done this in the right way. Okay. Yeah. And on. Right, so we have only 800 cases in this file. And 2000 in the other. Yeah. Right. So that's okay. Right. I'm going to go to JASP. I'm going to just close these. I shouldn't show the assignment file to you. That's no good. Just close that as well. Right. Let's start fresh with JASP. Okay. JASP. Open. And open up BFI Agenda 1, which contains 2000 cases. Now we're only going to work with 10 items. I quickly need to set them to scale. This is a pain, but it's a small price to pay for what we get in return from the developers of this wonderful software. They've got a massive grant that keeps them going. So there's the people who work on this are people who work at universities, in particular at the University of Amsterdam, and they have a grant that funds this wonderful project, makes this world top of the range software available to us. Okay, so there are our 10 items. And we are pretending that we don't know how many factors there are. We've got our 2000 cases. We're only going to work with extroversion and neuroticism as a small slice. And by default, JASP is going to use parallel analysis to decide how many factors to retain. All right, but we want to take more things into account, so I ask for the scree plot. And interesting, the scree plot parallel analysis actually seems to suggest 3 factors here. Do you see? 1, 2, 3. Eigenvalues are greater than the corresponding eigenvalues of random data. There's a big eigenvalue for the first factor, it drops for the second, then it drops for the third, and thereafter the changes in the eigenvalues of each successive factor are quite small. The alpha is a bit ambiguous here, could be there at the third or perhaps there, but I think it's there. So there's between the scree plot and the parallel analysis, there seems to be a bit of a disagreement. Let's go for 2 factors. And let's see. Yeah. And additional fit indices, if we were to look at that. So the Ramsey is 0.1. We would really like it to be below 0.08 and even better below 0.05. The TLI is not great. Okay. So how do we decide the number of factors? Well, another issue to take into consideration is the replicability of factors. So now we've got 2,000 cases. Right now, within those 2,000, it's big enough for us to do the following. So we'll split it again into 2. We're going to do a factor analysis and save the results. I'll call it my factor analysis 1. FA function of data, and we're going to use case 1 to 1000. And the variables are going to be extroversion starts in column 15, I think. No, column 11. So it's 5 agreeableness, 5 conscientiousness, and then it's the extroversion, and it ends at 20. So those are the extroversion and neuroticism items. N factors, let's start with 3. Okay. And we're going to do a factor analysis of data using the first 1000 cases. We ask for 3 factors, and we store the results in an object called myFA1. What I forgot to do is we need to activate the psych package, the app. We need to activate it. Right. If we run that, we've got our first factor analysis. Press the up arrow on your keyboard. Change our factor analysis 2. These are going to be cases 1001 to 2000. Again, ask for 3 factors. And we run that. If all goes well, get the results. Now we can check for congruence, fa.congruence of my factor analysis 1 and my factor analysis 2. How similar are the factors across those 2 analyses? Run it. Ah, this is not what I hoped for. We get 3 nicely replicated factors. So there is indication of 3 factors after all. Okay, but I'm going to ask you to bear with me now. We could see what it looks like, but it's not going to be psychologically helpful for us now to work with 3 factors. Let's see what's going on. So the neuroticism wants to break up into 2 parts. Okay. We are going to pretend that 2, we're going to work with 2. There's also psychological theory that comes into play, all right? So we're going to work with a nice neuroticism factor, a nice extroversion factor, okay? We can, and if we look at the factor loadings, each of those factor loadings are nice and strong. So these items are converging onto factor 1, those items are converging onto factor 2. If I remember, there are actually loadings for each item on each factor. I just drag this highlight button down to 0. Now it will show everything. So N1 to N5 have strong loadings on the first factor, but E1 to E5 have loadings close to 0. That's what we want to see. So it is those items E1 to E5 are not measuring what these items N1 to N5 are measuring. But they do have high loadings on the second factor, and then the extroversion or the neuroticism items have loadings close to 0. So there's evidence here of convergent and discriminant validity. The items are measuring what they're supposed to measure, and they are not measuring what they're not supposed to measure, which is a good thing. Okay. We can find the reliabilities of those scales. Keep in mind, let me just drag this up again. It's helpful for us to hide those that are small, close to 0. And nothing on neuroticism needs to be reverse scored, but we must reverse score E1 and E2. They have negative loadings on their factor. Okay. Strictly, I would now go into first doing a fitting a Spearman model on the neuroticism items and then fitting a Spearman model on the extroversion items. But we're going to skip that step now and just assume that it is okay. All right, to save some time. And we check the reliabilities for extroversion. Recall that 2 items need to be reverse scored, so reverse scaled items are E1 and E2. Okay, excellent. And we can here find, we don't need that for now. I'll say something about that maybe if we have some time. Okay, and our reliability is 0.772. That's McDonald's Omega. Crumbach's alpha point, it's also 0.77 if you were to round it. That reliability, what does it mean? 77% of the variance in the test score for extroversion reflects true score variance, which of course means that the remaining 23% is error. Strive for reliabilities of 0.8 and higher, so that you have 80% at least variance that is true variance. Okay. You'll see some reports where they take 0.7 as an acceptable cutoff, but I think we should strive for better and say 0.8 is a reasonable goal to strive for. Okay, keep this in mind. Remember this 0.77, the reliability of extroversion. Let's check the reliability of neuroticism, and there are no reverse scored items. Let's just check it and see what we get. 0.81, 8.4, 0.811. All right. So 0.77 and 0.81 are our reliabilities. Okay, so we're going to pretend that we are happy with the 2-factor structure. It's actually not that great. The neuroticism wants to split into 2, but when you get a factor with only 2 salient loadings, it's not good. We need at least 3 salient loadings, and you'll recall when we asked for 3 factors, the 1 factor was loaded by only 2 neuroticism items. So let's open up our other data set. It was called BFI Gender 2. And here we go. It's open. Wonderful. Let's just quickly do some homework. Set the measurement level of our variables to scale. Remember, if you've got your CSV file imported, you change the scale of the variables, then you can save your data file as a JASP file. And the next time you come in, you don't have to do it again. It will already have been done. Okay. Let's confirm our theoretical structure, which says that there are 2 factors present in our data, namely an extroversion factor and a neuroticism factor. We have an explicit theory which says that items E1 to E5 measures extroversion, but they don't measure neuroticism. And similarly, N1 to N5 measures neuroticism, but they don't measure extroversion. So that's our theory that we now go in with, and we want to put this to the test. So our first factor we can define as being made up of, and we can change the name there, let's call it extroversion, just to make it pretty. That's extroversion, and if I press enter, well, okay, there we go. And I'm going to select items E1 to E5 and place them under the extroversion factor. So now we have, in effect, what we're doing right now is we are fitting a Spearman model to the extroversion items, a 1-factor model. with only extroversion in there. Let's check model options. Nothing to, you can change that to marker variable. It's a good thing to do always. Factor scaling, just change it to marker variable. Okay, and then additional output. I'm going to ask for fit measures and get the R squared. There's no need for a plot now, and under advanced, is there anything? It's good practice to just ask for robust. Okay, it's not going to change anything. And under standardization, we ask for all. Okay. These are the settings that you could always use, and I believe we pointed it out in the lecture notes that we posted on confirmatory factor analysis as well as the video. Right, but these are the general settings that we are going to use. Okay, so just the extroversion, fitting a Spearman model to it, actually see very good fit, comparative fit index 0.97, Tucker-Lewis 0.94, we want those to be above 0.95. The Rimsey 0.079, it's just below our 0.08 criterion. Standardized root mean squared residual 0.035. That's excellent. Okay, so good fit for the extroversion factor. But we want to actually fit a factor with two models. So if we click on this plus button here, then we can add the second factor to it, which we SISM. Okay, come on. Not sure how I did it. Okay. Seems to want to be stuck there. All right. There we go. And we place our neuroticism items in the box. Now we've got a two-factor model. In fact, if I am going to ask for the plot, the model plot. Okay. Recall this is on fresh data, no? The 800 cases. So we have two factors. This is the model we hypothesized. This is our theoretical model, the one that we built on the basis of the 2000 cases. Two factors, E and N, 5 extroversion items, all have loadings on extroversion, but not on neuroticism. There are no arrows going from the extroversion factor to the neuroticism items, which means that those loadings are fixed to 0. It's got nothing to do with it. And similarly, neuroticism has got nothing to do with extroversion. So what you have here within this block of, say, extroversion is convergent validity, if the model fits the data. The lack of arrows from neuroticism to extroversion items and extroversion factor to neuroticism items represents discriminant validity. Okay, so what is the fit like of this theoretical model with data of our 800 cases? And let's see. There's quite a lot of output here. Here we go. The comparative fit index is 0.91. Tucker-Lewis 0.88. Root mean squared error of approximation 0.09. And standardized root mean squared residual 0.07. So it's not great. It's a little bit weaker than what we would have hoped for. And it's almost certainly the case that the problem lies with that neuroticism scale. Okay, it's not horrible. Okay, this is with fresh data. We've come with the theory, put the theory to the test, and we see that it's okay, but not great. We actually saw that already with the exploratory factor analysis. To help us understand where does this misfit lie, we could do two things. Okay. The two things that you could do is, in the first place, is to do another exploratory factor analysis, which I don't think is necessary in this case, but we could do that and see whether that gives any hints about how our items should be loading or not. The second thing, there are three things we could do, is to look at the residual covariance matrix. We've also previously in exploratory factor analysis looked at the residuals, and here we have the residuals, and we're going to look for pairs of big residuals, or pairs of items that have big residuals. So here is a big one. That would be item E1 and N4. The rows are not labeled, but it's the same order as that we have in the column. So that would be row E1, E2, E3, E4, N1 up to N5. So E1 and N4 has something in common above and beyond the factor. Here's a big residual. E2 and N4. So E2 and N5, and yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on there. Okay, another place to look, and I highlighted this in the presentation on confirmatory factor analysis, are the so-called modification indices. And these modification indices inform us about, if I were to make a change to the model on this parameter, the factor loading of N4 on extroversion, then it would yield the biggest improvement in fit. Okay, and that is this very big 0.601 residual that we see here. I'm sure that's the origin of it. So what is going on? What is going on with item N4, which is a neuroticism item? Why does it want to be part of extroversion? Let's take a look. Go to our course page. Let's go to our course page. There we go. And where is, I gave you the big 5 questionnaire somewhere. I'm pretty sure of it. Here we go. So what does the psychologist do? He or she goes to the content. N4, often feel blue. Why does that have something to do with extroversion? Makes no sense to me. I'm sorry. Apart that this is a very good segue into this week's lecture. Often feel blue would be a bad item to use in any setting that is not Northern American, or perhaps British, and context where people are familiar with that metaphor, because that an item like often feel blue assumes that you know that means I've got a bad feeling mood-wise, which is often thought to be associated with depression or so, but it might not be clear. And that could be one reason what's going on here. It's not a great item. We want to avoid metaphors in our items so that the meaning thereof is clear. And that is perhaps what is going on here. So often feel blue would be an item that we might want to, in a revision of our test, want to get rid of. Okay, nonetheless, let's go ahead and say, okay, so what it is saying is that we want, if I can return to the picture, it wants N4 also to be influenced by extroversion. So we could do it and say N4 goes to extroversion. So now N4 is in two places. Note here, N4 has an arrow leading to it from extroversion and from neuroticism. So it is converging on neuroticism, but it's also converging on extroversion. And that means it's lacking in discriminant validity. Nonetheless, what happened to our model fit? Let's take a look. It has improved to 0.94, 0.91 for TLI, the RIMSI 0.077, and the root mean squared residual 0.056. So by all commonly applied criteria, the model now fits well. We've learned something. We could get good model fit by allowing the item I often feel blue to load on both extroversion and on neuroticism. But that's not in practice a good thing to do, but we've learned it. So what it means is that for you as the psychometrician is that if you were to improve that scale, make a revision thereof, you want to work on item N4 so that it loads only neuroticism and not on both factors. And this is the way in which the statistics informs us about the psychology of what's going on when people respond to our test questions. So my example that I wanted to, or that I did use here, did not really meet my own expectations. I hope to find good fit in the first place and then to confirm that good fit in the second round. What we actually found was not great fit in the exploratory round using two factors. And then when we got to the confirmatory factor analysis, we again found okay, but not great fit. So, but I think hopefully it does illustrate the process of splitting your data into two parts, using the first part for development purposes, checking things out, trying things out, and then when you settle on a model, putting that model to the test in the second round. Here, our putting it to the test in the second round was not great, but we learned something from it. So in failure, there is progress. I'm hoping that makes sense to you. Again, that's also something that I think you should try to do in your assignments. Okay? Let me call halt here now and